Hi, I'm Shawn Douglass, an actor and director in Chicago, Illinois, and also a member of the theater department faculty at Northwestern University. And this is An Actor's Arc. In this episode, the extraordinary Larry Yando. A Chicago theater legend, he shares his journey from his beginning as a dancer to one of the busiest stage actors working in Chicago today. Hi, Larry Yando. Welcome to An Actor's Arc.
Hello, Shawn Douglass. Thank you for having me.
Do you remember the first time that you felt like you were drawn to being an actor?
I guess I can't remember not being drawn to it, but I didn't know. I think I didn't know it was to be an actor. I started as a dancer. I mean, the earliest memory I have of someone telling me I was drawn to it was kindergarten. I guess this Mrs. McGregor, who I loved, my kindergarten teacher, so much, and Mrs. Craig, my first grade teacher. It happened with both of them. I guess would always send these report cards home, which you used to get, if anyone remembers report cards, in a yellow envelope that slid out and it had grades on it, whatever, or in kindergarten, a little paragraph from the teacher about your student. And I guess for every report card Mrs. McGregor wrote to my mother, he sings and dances like a little bird and entertains us all. Now, my mother was from a working class, like 14 siblings, factory laborers. I mean, performing not in the mix, very odd. So, but she somehow listened to Mrs. McGregor, I think, and put me in dance class. So from a very young age, I did that, and I danced, and that's when I kind of knew I'm lucky, because I knew I was always on the right track. It wasn't until I went to college on a dance scholarship to Boston Conservatory of Music and all my friends were in that musical theater department. That's who I became friends with. And I realized I was on the right track, but I was sort of took a little wrong turn at some four.
Before we go more into college, Larry, can I ask you, what kind of dancing did you do?
Basically, it was a Stella and Alfonso dancing studio. They were ex-vaudevillians, and she was the talent, Estelle, and Alfonso was her drummer. But they both decided to open a dance studio in Poughkeepsie, New York, and they were real showbiz. I mean, I know this now looking back. Then I thought it was the only way to be. Slave driving really hard. Everything you did was with a big smile, and everything was strong and attack so I did tap, jazz, ballet, acrobatics, baton twirling, but I did everything. It was called, I took the intensive program. And I was, of course, one of their stars. I was a guy, number one, which always a male dancer is much more fortunate than females because the numbers are always in their favor. At least they were back then. Yeah. And I could dance and I loved it.
And you went to college where again?
I went originally to Boston Conservatory of Music, which had a dance program, a theater program, and a music program in Boston. And it took me not even a year to realize I didn't want to be going to ballet class anymore and dancing for the rest of the day. I started skipping classes. I discovered discos. I thought, I was going out every night and going wow, I'm from Poughkeepsie, and there I am in Boston, and I was in heaven, heaven. I got reprimanded because I was skipping classes. I said, well, I'm skipping because I want to be taking those musical theater classes. I don't think I want to dance. It was hard because I'd done it my whole life. So I quit after a year at Boston Conservatory. And then I went over to, just so I wouldn't lose time, I went to a state university school, SUNY New Paltz, which is near Woodstock, New York. I was so lucky to be there. It was a great theater department, and I remember I I went there, and my first week they had posted what they were going to do at the college this year, and one of the shows was Gypsy, a musical. And I walked into one of the faculty members' office. He didn't know me from Adam. I was a freshman. I walked in and said, "Hello, my name is Larry Yando, and I should be choreographing your show, Gypsy. I'm a dancer." And he sort of looked at me and he said, "You should. Who are you?" I said, I've been a dancer my whole life, and I should be choreographing that. You need me to choreograph your show. And honestly, I'm not that type of person or that type of actor. I've never sent a postcard with my picture and resume to anyone ever in my life. Maybe I'd be, maybe it would, I should have, but I never did that. I'm not a self-promoter, but for some reason with that, I was certain about my ability to dance and to choreograph. And indeed, he went a day later, he came to me and said, he sort of believed me. He said, okay, okay. So I immediately sort of jumped to the front of the line and became a choreographer for these juniors and seniors. And then I also played Tulsa, the guy who does the big number in it. Yeah. And then the rest is sort of just a fabulous 4 years of great teachers, being close to New York. I had a woman who was one of the first directing MFA students to ever get through Yale, the first female woman to ever get through Yale. She became my friend. Her name was Beverly Brom, and she was just a good acting teacher. I had a lot of bad habits to break. I remember the first acting class I took. It was before she got there. There was another teacher named Richard Bell. There were great students. I loved them anyway, and they're my dear friends, but they also turned out to be very good actors who we all know now. It was a fluke. We happened to be there at the same time. John Turturro was my roommate. And we were in the same acting class. So I was surrounded by a surprising mix of really talented people, very different from me. But I remember my first acting class, and I remember in the acting class, I did a scene or I did something. They said, "Okay, Larry, why do you keep smiling?" I guess I was doing these scenes, and my default setting was this big kind of smile, and I had no idea I was doing it. And that was very upsetting to me. It was Estelle and Alfonso had made their mark, you know what I mean?
From the dance classes, the vaudeville team.
Absolutely. But I just thought, performing, smile. I'm having a good time. See me having a good time? I'm shoving this good time down your throat. Fact of the matter was, I was having a good time. But there was also this other very false mask that had somehow got pasted on. So I had to work through that. And that was life-changing for me, because all the good things I got from all that early physical training and dance training, like kinesthetic sense or whatever one needs, I've never had a problem being in my body.
Can I
And
ask you,
that's
when you
not
say being in your body, what do you mean by that?
I mean, kind of, you see people who are in their head a lot. A lot of actors have trouble getting out of their heads. In other words, we think uh, correctly, we've done homework, we understand what we're doing in a scene or in whatever, right? But it kind of stays in your head. It's not acting to me is a sensual experience. And I mean that as far as senses go. And I feel I don't have to do a lot of mental gymnastics to make it a sensual experience for me, because it's how I responded to life clearly as long ago as Mrs. McGregor's kindergarten class, although I didn't know that, but clearly that was part of something. So I kind of mean, we pull words off a page. If we're talking theater, right? We pull words from someone's creative mind off a page and bring them to life in some way. And the way I bring things to life without a lot of effort is is physically and sensually to begin with, as much as my brain. Both are crucial, I think. They both have to work together, as well as your spirit. But I'm saying, I believe the physical, sensual response to a very non-sensual format, which is words on ink on paper, is I think the trickiest for a lot of actors. Anyway, once I got rid of those connections to also smiling all the time and having to work a little too hard to be the one that called attention to himself, once I worked that balancing act a little, and I didn't solve it 4 years at New Paltz at all. I still am solving it, but I was made aware of it at New Paltz.
I love also, Larry, that your story involves going to a smaller school. I think it's valuable for some people to know, hey, that's possible. For me, a good department can be anywhere, being among either the right teachers, the faculty, or the group of students you're working with.
Absolutely. I am so happy I did not go to a conservatory for my undergrad. I actually got so much more exposure to things, to material and people. That, of course, is what we base all that we do on when we act, really. It wasn't a kind of myopic 4 years. It was a kind of opening up and seeing things that that were new to me and surprising. But the first time this director, Richard Bell, that I mentioned, who was a very intense kind of stoop-shouldered, serious, like he didn't wear a beret, but he should have in a way. He had a long beard, and he was just very soft-spoken, intense actor guru type, you know what I mean? And I was not necessarily part of his group. But for some reason, the second show he did before he left was A View from the Bridge. He cast me as Rudolpho, which is the young, the one who falls in love with Eddie's daughter and sings Paper Doll. And he cast me as Rudolpho with John as Marco. John Turturro as my brother, Marco. And then another brilliant actor, Michael Badalucco, who was in school at the time, who's done a lot of TV and stuff since, but he was Eddie, and my favorite actress and good friend was Beatrice, and it was just this cast that was intense, right? And I felt so out of my element, and all I did, and I remember just watching John and I were very close, so we shared everything. So I felt like it never felt weird sort of watching each other and sort of using each other. It was a very natural kind of relationship in acting class, on stage, and also off. So I just thought I've got to imitate him because Richard Bell loves him. You know, I've got to be, he knows how to be in this play. He's from Queens, John, and you know, it was a New York City kind of feel to it. And so I kind of, I don't know what I did, but I somehow allowed Michael's and John's and Wendy, I remember watching them and picking up their rhythms and trying to suck up their intensity and how they looked at people and how they sort of moved because the language set on them really well. And when I realized it was okay to do that, because it was still going to come out of my voice and I knew not to do an imitation. I knew just to sort of try to sense the world that was being created, that I didn't, and maybe not be the leader, the choreographer in that world.
Uh-huh.
I kind of allowed myself to be affected, like constantly, by so many things. I sucked a lot of stuff up. And I think it's then that I felt like I was, by the end of that production, I felt like I was an actor. It would, I guess I felt like an actor, but I felt more importantly about, I felt more importantly, I felt what I think uh, acting is, which is that weird word ensemble. I felt that for the first time.
Ah.
And I remember it being brilliantly effective. And um, and I remember it, I thought that, and I still think it, because as a group, we did something that was brilliant and effective. It didn't, I rarely talk about that show. I haven't talked about the show in so long, but if I do talk about it, I don't say how great Michael was as Eddie. I don't, I immediately think of the scenes where we're all on stage when he lifts the chair up and Rudolph. I just remember the energy of all of us putting into this story at the same time and the euphoria that brought me and what that felt like.
So, with all of that new understanding of acting, did you immediately come to Chicago to work? Did you work in New
No.
York first?
Mm-mm. So everything went bottoms up. The last show at New Paltz was Rhymers of Eldritch, Lanford Wilson. But I remember during that I had to squat around a fire I had made a lot, and I was having trouble squatting. My leg was hurting. Typical dancer thinks, oh, a ligament. You ignore pain. That was part of my life. You just know. And I remember that's the first I started feeling that. And then I went and did summer stock, a big summer stock show in like 10 shows in 10 weeks at Surflight Summer Theater in New Jersey on this island, which was so fabulous. All these great people throwing West Side Story up while you're rehearsing King and I in 5 days. It was insane. I did that. As the summer progressed, my legs started hurting more and more, but I kept going and I couldn't bend it all the way. And then it just was bugging me. I didn't know what it was. My plan was to go to New York when summer stock was over, audition for Broadway shows. My way in was going to be I sing and dance. I definitely get to do that. Then I'd get to act after that. But I thought my in was to audition for musicals, you know. And I was confident still about my dancing, you know what I mean? And then after summer stock ended, just at the beginning of September, I was walking to my friend's house in New York just to visit before my birthday. I stepped off a little curb and my right leg just split in half, just
Ow.
broke apart. Yeah, it was the most painful thing I've ever experienced in my life. I fell into the foyer of this friend's apartment from Summerstock. I looked down and my leg was going that way above the knee, like in the middle of my thigh is when, and
Oh
all
my
I
gosh.
did was step off a little step. Come to find out, I had a giant cell tumor, which had been there for months inside my femur. It had grown and grown and grown until the bone was eggshell thin, and it finally just gave out when I stepped a little funny off a curb, and my whole life changed. And then I was in the hospital. I went to Sloan Kettering, and I'm thankful it wasn't cancer, but it was a tumor. It's considered a benign tumor, but I had kept going for what was it, 4.5, 5 months with this pain, just thinking, oh, ligament, whatever, dancer, whatever. And I was laid up and I was on crutches for 2 years. I then went back up to my mom's house in Poughkeepsie, and sort of there I was in a splint with crutches. Then one of the teachers from New Paltz, who I had lived in his house with his wife my final year of college, a gorgeous house. He came over to my mother's house as I'm sitting there stoned on my butt on painkillers forever. Anyway, this teacher said, "You cannot stay here at your mother's house. You're going to lose your mind." I didn't lose my mind. He brought me over. They fixed their their upstairs bedroom floor. They made it all up so I could stay over there. I directed a couple shows at the college. I did all these kind of things, and people were nice to me and helped me, and especially Frank and Susie Pratt, this teacher and his wife. And I sort of got to do some stuff there. I choreographed 2 shows over there with one leg, insane. But at that point, I thought I could do anything. I did 2 community theater productions in Poughkeepsie while I was there. Funnily enough, I did Whose Life Is It Anyway, where he's in the bed,
Oh yeah.
quadriplegic. So yeah, and then I did 5th of July, which he's the lead guy is a paraplegic. So I found these ways to do some shows, but basically I was stuck and didn't know what to do. I decided I'm going to audition for grad schools. I auditioned for the theater school, which was called it was just changed to the theater school at DePaul. I had heard about Chicago. I had seen Balm and Gilead in New York. It changed my life. And more than it changing my life, Laurie Metcalf changed my life. I'll never forget that performance as long as I live. I'm one of those people who, that 25-minute monologue she does with brilliant Glenn Headley, listening like I've never seen anyone listen in my life on stage. I remember that I had a few of those during these years when I was on crutches, a few shows that sort of changed my world. Angels in America being. So I auditioned for DePaul Theater School. And because of my dance training, I sort of hid the fact I had any problem with my leg. I was now down to a cane after 2 years. I was using a cane. I hid the cane in the bathroom at this place in New York where they were having auditions. I forget the studios. I kind of could walk. I couldn't bend my right knee at this point. It was absolutely fused straight. So, but I could move. I knew enough to know, do a lot up here and no one's going to look down there. You know what I mean? So I went in and I never mentioned I had like a really screwed up leg. And I was like, I auditioned, I did my 2 pieces. for Rick Murphy or whoever, I don't know. And then I heard that I got in, and so the following September, I flew out here to Chicago and had to tell all the teachers because I came with my cane still. I'm like, by the way, might have a little problem in all your movement classes and stuff because I've had these major surgeries and I can't bend my knee. And I don't know what was said behind closed doors, but nobody kicked me out or anything.
Do you recall a moment or two from that period?
Yeah, I certainly was happy. You know, I'm a New York guy. I love New York City. I love it. I miss it to this minute. I miss it. It's an energy. But when I got to Chicago, there was something very beautifully welcoming about it and easier. And that's probably what I needed at that point. And I had a purpose because I had classes. So you know, and you weren't allowed to do any professional auditioning or anything while you were in school at that point. They wouldn't allow it. So I had 3 years in Chicago solely doing classes in school. And I was very, very lucky. For me, other people would probably say they weren't lucky, but for me, it was pure luck that Bella Itkin, whose father started the school and who was then the dean of acting, I think, or whatever they call it, the head of the acting program, who was infamous or famous or infamous with everyone. She'd been around since the beginning of the school. Um, and she decided, unbeknownst to me, to teach the first year, one of the first year MFA class, acting classes. My acting teacher was Bella Itkin, and who was not easy. And I was very proud and cocky once again from my training at New Paltz. So perhaps I went into DePaul with a little chip on my shoulder. So the first thing that happened in that class, that Bella Itkin class, is, you know, she talks like this, and she, you know what I mean? Like she's was a character, brilliant and smart and tough. And I remember the first thing she said was, "Well, I'm here to teach you. I'm your teacher for something that is unteachable." That's what she said. She told me acting is. She told us acting is unteachable, but we'll try. And then she said, and I have and my big 2 words of advice that I've told everybody. Um, she said this the first day is eat a good breakfast and never go on stage without a handkerchief in your pocket. Those were her 2 major rules. Isn't that funny? And trust me, I make sure I have a tissue or something in my pocket all the time now, because it has happened where I've been on stage and needed something like to wipe so it was good advice. Odd that those were the first 2 things she said to me. And anyway, so it was the first class. She didn't know us, and she said, "I want everyone to do a monologue. Do the monologue that you got into the school with. I don't care what. I want to see you all do your piece." So over the next week and a half, everyone got up one at a time to do their monologue. And I held back in the back. I was just surveying the land. And I remember watching everyone. And honestly, for the most part, I was going, what did I get myself into? Because in my head, some of what I was seeing was really below what I had hoped I was getting into as far as level. So I just kept holding back because I knew I loved my monologue that I auditioned. It was that stupid thing that everybody did, but usually women, that Christopher Durang Tinkerbell speech. Do you remember Identity Crisis? So anyway, everybody, it was finally a week and a half later, and everybody had gone, and I clearly had to go next. And I said, it's me, Bella. I'm next. I'm the last one. She said, okay, well, get up there. I got up and I'm like, now I'll show them how to act. Watch this, what an asshole. But I wasn't an asshole, but I thought, oh, they're gonna love this because I'm so connected physically, and I don't know what I thought. I was cocky, so I got up and I did this identity crisis monologue, and I highly energized using the space, all those catchphrases, use it. There was a cabinet they used for classes to keep things in. I opened it and got in it at one point in the monologue, you know what I mean? Spontaneously, physically exploring the piece, thinking everyone was being dazzled. I finished the speech and there's this silence, and Bella just goes, okay, go get a chair and sit down and just do the damn monologue. She said, I can't watch you flitting all over like a butterfly. Like she totally chopped me off at the knees. And I'm like, I thought she was going to go, that is what acting is, class. I had hopes that would happen. Absolute opposite. She kind of just said, go get a chair and sit down and do the damn monologue. Like, so I went over, got my chair, and I put it here and totally deflated it. And I did it again. And then she said, yeah, now I can hear the monologue. That's a little better. That flippy dippy stuff, she called it. I don't know what. Anyway, so that was good that happened right away. And then we went on to become friends, and I could tell she respected me, and she was behind me, and thought well of me. And I did some major roles in her shows, but she did tell me one other thing, and she was also my advisor. So I had to go twice a month to talk to her. And she said, I think you should. She said, you're going to have to be careful because you tend to be, you're a little, you very often and I'm like, and she said, a little too poetic. This older woman, I'm like, I know she was trying to get to an effeminate issue. I know that's what she was trying to say, or maybe not even that specific, but she loved her macho, Marlon Brando male students. I mean, that's what I was not that. I am not that. And I think that's what she was referring to, but I'll never forget her finally finding the word poetic is what she decided to call it. And I kind of thought, well, I like that, although I wasn't supposed to like it in a way. So it's not like, I mean, it did not at all offend me in a way. I actually took it to say, I felt like she was saying versatility is all.
So at 32 or 33, you're coming out of DePaul and you're entering the Chicago theater scene. And did you return to music theater, or how did your career get underway?
Well, first of all, I never planned on being here. I planned on going right back. I came here to get my MFA, and I thought I'd go right back to New York. I got, and I believe this is a big part of things, I got lucky. I auditioned for a show at Pegasus Theater, which was a kind of hot non-equity company that did a lot of
Pegasus
Sondheim
Players,
musicals.
right?
Yeah, Pegasus Players at
Uh-huh.
Truman College. So right out of school, I kind of got in this production of Noise. I didn't kind of get in. I got in Noises Off, and I'm like, oh, I'll wait to go back to New York. I'll do this play. And it ended up being a kind of popular play in the city. It was well received. Really, they moved it to what was then the theater building. It ran for a really long time. So I was in a kind of hit Chicago play right away. Not and you know, one of the things that's brilliant about this city is the non-equity world is treated with justice, and rightfully so, treated with just as much respect and credibility as the equity world. There's so many great non-union companies and they keep springing up. And it afforded me some great chances. You know, I did 3 really, luckily, hot shows in a row at Pegasus Players as a non-union actor. And I think it really sort of helped me get noticed in town. But the first one was Noises Off, and it was really fun and really great. And I stayed. I thought, oh, I'll just keep my apartment leased for a little longer. I don't need this is good. I did it. While I was there, Vicky Bussert, who did all the Sondheim musicals there and was doing a production of Anyone Can Whistle. And I was still in musical theater. I still had that musical theater kind of you know, obsession. So I'm like, oh my God, nobody does Anyone Can Whistle. I'm totally got to do it. So I auditioned and I got the lead guy opposite this amazing woman named Colette Hawley, who's no longer here. And it turned out to be a really good show and I loved Vicky, the director, and it was really fun to do. So then I got these 2 kind of high profile shows right in a row at Pegasus Players at Truman College. And I was having fun and learning things and loved it. And then they just, Eric Simonson, who I didn't know from Eric Simonson, but at that point, um, he and Harry Lennox Jr. had decided they wanted to do a project together, and they decided upon the play version of Kiss of the Spider Woman, which was a British uh, adaptation of the novel by Manuel Puig. And Simon Callow had done it. And they wanted to do that 2-person play. And they were going to do it at Pegasus. And they needed, so he was going to play in the film, it was Raul Julia, but they needed they needed Molina. The artistic director said, you should look at Larry. He's playing the lead in our play right now. You know, Anyone Can Whistle. And they came about an hour. They made arrangements for me to come an hour early to a performance one up at Truman College of Anyone Can Whistle. I went in this tiny little office with the artistic director of the company, Arlene Crudson, me, and Eric Simonson, and we were as close. It was cramped. She was sitting on a desk hovering. He was right here at a chair, and I was squished by the door in another chair. And he said, just read this scene with me. Read the script. And so I'm reading like about a page of this Molina scene with Eric, no Harry Lennox Jr. And I read it, and I don't even remember. I just remember how close it was. And he said, thank you, Larry, if you know him. Then since have done a lot of plays with him, we became close. But I did not. He said, thank you, Larry. And Arlene said, thanks, Larry. You better get back to warm up. So I went out, went down the hall back to our group vocal warm up we always did for Anyone Can Whistle. So Arlene Crudson, she leans over and she goes in my ear while I'm like, no, no, we're all singing. You got it. He wants you to do it. And I'm like, I did? I mean, I read like 10 lines. Anyway, it was an amazing experience for me. And I didn't know what the Jeff Awards were, but I was so over the moon, when I'm nominated for a Jeff Award, to me, that I didn't know. I go to the Jeff Awards. I'm all dressed up. I'm up against all these major people, whatever, Robert Bruller, I think, and Shelley Berman for I'm Not Rappaport, I don't know. And so there I am. And all of a sudden, Shannon Cochran, who I don't know, is giving the award out for best actor, lead actor in a play. And I remember she said, and the Larry Yando. Well, I thought I screamed. I feel like I've gotten so jaded now. I'm remembering how exciting that was. Anyway, and plus the role, and Harry and I had gotten really close, and it was a very deep, moving story. And I feel like kind of really excavated some stuff. I felt brave doing it, which is what I always want to feel, and I don't always feel sometimes. Like I feel lazy, too lazy to be brave. But for the most part, I try to be brave. And I really felt it in that. And I really felt like I opened my soul up for that show. And I felt like this was somehow a reward for it. Like people noticed. But the most important part of the story, Shawn, is I got up just as I'm walking and about to go up the stage. I hear loud as day, totally, I don't know who it was. All I heard was someone go, "Who?" So they announced the winner, like with absolute disbelief and dismay. It was perfect, like thinking like, I've arrived. And I think probably what most people were thinking is, who? Oh, but it was exciting. And I do believe that enough people saw that to kind of maybe take notice of me. I think about that. And then I did a lot. I started doing a lot of like 6 years of shows at Marriott, and they were great to me too. And I
The
played
Marriott
some really fun-
Lincolnshire
Yes,
Theater,
yes, musicals. I
which
did do after that some. I went back to doing musicals. If they thought they could get away with an actor who only had to sing a little, I'd get the part. You know what I mean?
And was
I
your
don't
leg
know.
feeling stronger by that time? Were you able to
It
dance?
was. I was still compensating and doing the magician act of look over here, don't look there. Yeah. But it was still problematic. But it was doing a show out there. I was doing Little Shop, playing Seymour. A few years later, that the whole leg got compromised. That original surgery just wasn't holding up anymore. And I had to actually have another big sort of reconstruction of my leg. It had just sort of deteriorated. I think because I never stopped, I just kept pretending I could do whatever I wanted. And I remember people complimented me on that, and they said, "How do you do it?" And I got a lot of, "You're unbelievable, Larry. You just keep going. Nothing can stop you," all that stuff. And it felt good. And basically now in retrospect, I think I was probably stupid.
I'm interested how you moved on from that time working in musical theater, because you've worked at all of the major theaters in town, Larry, and many
Well,
times over at many of them.
I, because of Noises Off and Kiss of the Spider Woman, was first kind of put into the public eye in this city in plays, not in musicals. I then did tons of musicals, but I didn't. I was first seen in some plays, or at least I was seen at the same time in some plays. So I kind of bypassed getting pigeonholed into a musical theater kind of category, even though that's where I felt most at home. not most at home, but I still felt very at home, and I still loved it and loved doing it and seeing it. I loved all the people in it. For whatever reason, I slid by without getting called a musical theater actor. As a matter of fact, I think it helped me get cast in musical theater very often. I remember the producer and the artistic director, Diane Early and Carrie, they were married. Whenever I'd come in or talk about doing one of their shows or at the audition or something, they'd always say, in a kind of disdainful way, when I'd come in, they'd go, oh, the actor's here, everybody. The actor. Hello, Larry. How is the actor today? And it was a loving kind of obnoxious thing they were doing, because I know they used me a lot and they liked me. And I cared very much for both of them. But if you dissect that a little, there's something really not right about that. Like the idea that they thought they could use that as a kind of slur is interesting to me. It's like the reverse of the legitimate theater calling you a musical theater actor. It was like their version of that, which I found interesting. Here comes the actor, everybody, you know. And we want an actor in this role. We want to cast an actor in this role. And some of the best acting I've ever seen has been from people who have been in musical, be it Marriott or anywhere else, you know what I mean? So that differentiation between musical theater and an actor is weird.
Much of your career in Chicago has been associated with Chicago Shakespeare Theater and doing Shakespeare, but you've also toured in The Lion King. You've worked in other classical work. You've worked at smaller but really well-respected theaters like Writers Theater in the northern suburbs here in Chicago. But I'm curious about Shakespeare and if there were special challenges in that work for you that went beyond what you had learned in school.
Yeah. I think so. I think I had a natural affinity for it. That helped. I'll explain that, what I mean by that. But because I came to Shakespeare fairly late, I wasn't interested in it at all. I never thought, I wasn't interested in it, not until like 5 years out of school here or something like that, 6 years. I think that's when I auditioned for something at Shakespeare Rep, which is Chicago Shakespeare Theater. But it didn't appeal to me. I was much more into Sam Shepard. If it wasn't a musical that I loved the score for, loved the role, it would be a playwright who was much more contemporary, poetic perhaps, but contemporary and much more based on my training at my undergrad, which was very black box theater. That's where I felt most comfortable. So yeah, but I said I had a natural affinity for it because number one, I told you I loved to sing, even though I knew I didn't have the instrument to sing. But there was something about melody and rhythm and the way words were put together that always interested me. Before I started doing a lot of Shakespeare, I was cast a lot at the Court. I did a lot at the Court Theater for Nick Ruddle and Charlie. And those texts were very often, you know, Ibsen. We did Clytemnestra or Electra I did there. And I did Noel Coward, Oscar Wilde, heightened kind of what people might mistakenly call comedy of man or a style comedy or something. There was something about language and the sensuality of it and its ability to sort of lift people up and Tom Stoppard. I mean, these plays always fascinated me, but I didn't include Shakespeare for some reason. It was just too much. I had bad experiences like a lot of us in high school. But then I started, by doing it, I became interested and I started putting pieces together, and I kind of found my way to loving it in the same way, in a euphoric way and revelatory way that I felt and still feel about musicals in a way. And some of those playwrights like Tennessee Williams, Tom Stoppard, where language, the choice of language, tells just as important a story as the actual plot. You know what I'm saying? The words that are chosen and the actor slash character choosing them reveals as much as actually the dictionary definitions of what those words mean. And I tend to gravitate toward that. I ended up loving it. And luckily, Barbara Gaines took a chance on me. I guess Barbara has told me Bella Itkin went up to her one time and said, "Why the hell don't you use Larry Yando?" And Barbara Gaines said, "I don't know who Larry Yando is." She said, and the typical Bella said something like, "Well, find out who he is. You should be using him." I got cast in Cymbeline and then did a bunch, and I quite love it. And I also found, more importantly, that because of the way I sort of investigated Shakespeare from a black box theater mentality, which is what I kind of, where I found myself, View from the Bridge and all that. Because of the way I investigated it and I was attracted to it and I wanted it to work for me, I connected dots with it that I could then share with actors who ran screaming from it, like so many of us do.
Larry, you've always appeared and have talked about feeling very confident, sometimes maybe an unearned confidence when you were young. But
Yeah.
You have always seemed to me from the outside that you approach your work with a real sense of certainty about who you are and what you bring to the table. And I just wonder if there was any point in your career, a production, an interaction with another actor or director where you faced a challenge that you didn't know how you were going to face and or you didn't know how you were going to meet that challenge, and how and if you did.
I know that I do not work well. I don't think anybody does. I do not work well out of fear or self-doubt. I don't mean a critical eye, but I do know if I don't feel uh, safe, which I always feel safe in a rehearsal room. I've been very lucky. I I don't think you can find the danger that is inherent in theater unless you feel safe. And so I don't work well when I'm questioning myself or someone makes me question myself. And that has happened really to me sometimes, more often through an actor who somehow has a problem. Hasn't happened in a long time, and that has been really hard because the minute you become self-conscious, I believe those, the vessels between here and what you're putting out shut down and become not lubricated. And so, and nothing can get accessed, and that's hard. I, I do think a major thing, and I've said this to people, is don't be an asshole. I'm sure there's people who hate me, and I'm sure there's people who I have crossed without even knowing it, or knowing it and I can't remember. And I know there's people who would rather chew on broken glass than watch me on stage. It's such a subjective profession. So, but I feel I've tried not to be an asshole. And I think the fact that people have asked to work with me again after I've worked with them, I think that's what I'm most proudest of.
Well, my last question was going to be, do you think you've been successful? But that sort of answered that question.
I think I have been successful. A surprise. It was a different, I rode with the punches. Is that the expression? What I mean is starting with my leg, which was a major punch to sort of have to recalculate. I feel I've kind of rolled with it and gone and been very, very fortunate because of it. And I also feel like I've worked hard, that I've earned it. But there's some luck in there, and there's some fate, and there's some destiny. And you can't do anything about that. Like I would never have known I would have ended up here. Like I said, even when I graduated from DePaul before I got in Noises Off, my plan was to go back to New York. Now it's 26 years later, and I'm still here, and I've gotten to do such a variety of things, and that has to have something to do with luck, and then also showing up and not being an asshole, I think. And I think I've been successful in that for the most part.
I want to end with something I call 3-2-1. 3 actors whom you admire and a quick reason why.
Glenda Jackson.
Why?
It's that brilliant mix of brain and intellect and passion, body, yeah, sensuality and logic. I'll pick a Chicago actor, definitely. Shannon Cochran. I mentioned her already, but I'm going to say Shannon. And that's got to do with, because I've had experience seeing her and I've had experience working with her. And it's a great, you don't get to have, it doesn't happen all that often that you get to work with someone again who supports you and also you can support at the same time. And because we've been lucky enough to do that, you start at a place that sometimes takes 3 weeks in rehearsal to get to, you know what I mean, when you're working opposite someone. And it's so great to jump those 3 weeks because you get so much farther because you're starting, you're already 3 weeks ahead of the ball, you know what I mean? So
because of
there's a
the
lot more
relationship you have and the
yeah,
knowledge.
yeah, I would say because yes, and a trust thing, and a respect. You know what I mean? There's a lot of actors that I trust, but I don't necessarily love their work. With Sean and I, both of those things are true. You know what I mean? And so I would say Tom Courtney. British actor from The Dresser. I love him, and I love him because his vulnerability is so easily accessed, and so the struggle to keep a mask over that vulnerability always provides such a kind of it. I'm always interested in that struggle, trying to keep a character or actor's attempt to keep a mask on when it's falling away. And I love that he really kind of embodies that. I mean, there's a million more. I don't know why I picked Tom Courtney, but I was just thinking of that performance in The Dresser that made me sort of watch a lot of stuff he did. And
That's terrific. 2, trick and treat. And the trick is a trick of the trade.
I would say a trick of the trade is to not, how do I put it? Not to continue down a dishonest path. In other words, if you know you're not there in a moment on stage and you're just going through the motions, a trick that works for me to bring me into the present and the now is always to just stop, take a deep breath, and look at something that actually exists on the stage where you are right then, either a prop, a piece of set, or a person you're talking to, their eyes. But it's okay and human and absolutely and actually interesting because it's real and true and what's happening in the moment, to just sort of stop and reset. There's no one saying you have to keep going. And that has served me well and worked well for me. When something's going on and you're not there and it's not working and it's not going.
And the treat is something that still delights you about working as an actor.
Yeah, still delights me. Applause.
That is maybe the most honest response. I love it. 1.
I mean, well, it does kind of, yes, it does delight me still. For actually not. I'm sure it has to do ego reasons too, but it actually has more to do with like you're not sure if you got through and whether it's a lie or not. It feels like, oh, they heard me. Oh, they got the story. You know what I mean? Oh, they're there. And that it's reassuring to me, probably more than delightful.
1, something you're still working on getting better at, something you're aspiring to, something you still want to accomplish. One of those things.
I aspire to liking or feeling comfortable on camera more than I did. So because so much now is being done like this interview or auditions or self-tapes. It's a medium that I didn't really pay much attention to because I was luckily so involved in live theater experience. I'm trying to figure out how to not be disenchanted with what I've devoted my life to now that I'm watching it. You know what I'm saying? It's very hard for me. And
Yeah.
To me, it puts whether I don't think, like I said, it's so subjective. You can't be objective. So no matter what, I'm going to have an opinion and I'm going to have problems with seeing myself. And I at least I am. I don't know if everybody does, but before I didn't have that element. There wasn't an opportunity to see my performance of Lear from last night. I was doing another one in 4 hours, you know what I mean? And you do it again, and then I'd never see that. But now it's there to see, and I don't want that to ruin the joy I feel having done it the night before and getting to do it again. So I guess what I'm aspiring to is kind of enjoyment of being able to watch myself and kind of not avoiding any kind of self-loathing.
I certainly enjoy talking with you, and I think one of the reasons I enjoy talking with you is because of the qualities that you say you admire in actors, which is passion and
Uh-huh.
wit and intellect, and I might add eccentricity.
Yeah.
But all of that is such a
Poetic. Poetic.
oh yes, and the poet. But I so admire that in your work on stage, and love it in you as a person as well. And thank you for spending the time talking with me. I so
Oh,
appreciate it.
thank you. That's first of all, that's awfully nice. Thanks, Shawn. But no, I'm happy to do it. I just have a fear I'm boring.